When you hear the name Douglas MacArthur, what comes to mind? The corncob pipe, the aviator sunglasses, maybe the famous words, "I shall return." He was, without a doubt, one of America's most iconic and decorated generals, a true Pacific hero of World War II. But what if I told you his greatest victory wasn't won on the battlefield? What if his most profound legacy was forged not with bullets, but with vision, compassion, and a surprising partnership with a former enemy? This is the incredible, often overlooked story of how Douglas MacArthur, the conquering general, became the unlikely architect of modern Japan. It's a tale of two powerful figures from vastly different worlds. MacArthur, the supreme commander of the Allied forces, and Emperor Hirohito, the divine ruler of a shattered empire. Their first meeting was a moment charged with tension, a potential flashpoint that could have plunged Japan into further chaos. Instead, it became the cornerstone of one of the most remarkable national transformations in history. Imagine Japan in August 1945. Two atomic bombs had just brought the deadliest war in human history to a shocking end. The country was in ruins. Its cities were flattened, its economy non-existent, and its people were starving, desperate, and utterly demoralized. They had been taught for generations that their emperor was a living god, and that surrender was the ultimate dishonor. Now, their god had been defeated, and their nation was occupied by the very enemy they were told was a barbarian horde. The future looked like a black hole. Into this abyss stepped General MacArthur. At 65 years old, he was appointed the Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, or SCAP. He was essentially the uncrowned king of Japan, holding absolute power over 80 million people. His mission was monumental: to demilitarize Japan, democratize its government, and rebuild its society from the ground up. Many in the Allied camp were crying out for vengeance. They wanted the emperor tried as a war criminal and hanged. They wanted Japan crushed so it could never rise again. MacArthur saw things differently. He understood that simple revenge would only sow the seeds of future conflict. He believed in a different kind of power, the power of reconstruction, of building something new and better from the ashes of the old. He saw an opportunity not just to punish, but to transform. And he knew that the key to this entire audacious project was the one man who still held the heart and soul of the Japanese people, Emperor Hirohito. The world held its breath on September 27, 1945. Emperor Hirohito, a man considered divine by his people, who had never been photographed with a commoner, let alone a foreign conqueror, traveled to the American embassy to meet MacArthur. The symbolism was immense. It was the defeated God King going to the victor. Many expected Hirohito to plead for his life. MacArthur's staff prepared for a tense, formal, and possibly hostile encounter. What happened next shocked everyone. Hirohito walked in, bowed deeply and spoke with a quiet dignity that immediately impressed MacArthur. Through his interpreter, the emperor said something extraordinary. He told MacArthur, "I come to you, General MacArthur, to offer myself to the judgment of the powers you represent as the one to bear sole responsibility for every political and military decision made and action taken by my people in the conduct of this war." He didn't beg, he didn't make excuses. He offered to take all the blame, to sacrifice himself for his people. In that single moment, MacArthur's entire perception of the emperor, and indeed of his mission, shifted. He saw not a defeated tyrant, but a leader of immense courage and integrity. He described it later, saying, "I was moved to the very marrow of my bones." He was an emperor by inherent birth, but in that instant I knew I was face to face with the first gentleman of Japan. This was the turning point. MacArthur made a bold and controversial decision. He would not prosecute the emperor. Instead, he would work with him. He realized that Hirohito was the only figure who could unite the Japanese people and persuade them to accept the radical changes that were coming. Trying him as a war criminal would have turned him into a martyr, sparking massive resistance, riots, and possibly a bloody guerrilla war that would have cost countless more lives. Keeping the emperor as a symbol of unity, but stripping him of his divine status and political power, was a stroke of genius. And so began one of history's most unlikely partnerships. MacArthur initiated sweeping reforms. A new constitution, often called the MacArthur Constitution, was drafted. It renounced war forever, transferred sovereignty from the emperor to the people, established a democratic parliament, and, most radically, granted universal suffrage, giving Japanese women the right to vote for the first time. Feudal land structures were broken up, giving land to the farmers who worked it. Labor unions were encouraged, and the massive industrial conglomerates that had fueled the war machine were dismantled. Through it all, Emperor Hirohito played his part. In a landmark radio address on New Year's Day, 1946. He publicly renounced his divinity, telling his stunned people that the emperor was not a god, but a mortal man, and that the ties between him and his people were based on trust and affection, not legend and myth. He then traveled the length of the country, visiting factories, farms, and schools. No longer a distant deity, but a human symbol of a new, peaceful Japan. His presence calmed fears and gave legitimacy to MacArthur's reforms. The results were astonishing. In just a few short years, a nation that had been a militaristic, feudal empire was transformed into a thriving, peaceful democracy. The occupation, which could have been brutal and oppressive, was instead largely peaceful and constructive. MacArthur's approach was firm but fair. He respected Japanese culture and traditions while surgically removing the elements that had led to aggression and war. He wasn't just a ruler, he was a teacher, guiding an entire nation toward a new way of life. Of course, it wasn't a perfect process. Some critics argue MacArthur was too autocratic, that the reforms were too American-centric, but the results speak for themselves. The foundation he laid proved to be incredibly durable. The Japanese constitution he helped write has never been amended. The nation he helped rebuild became a staunch ally of the United States and a global economic powerhouse, a beacon of peace and stability in Asia. The relationship between MacArthur and Hirohito is a powerful lesson in leadership. It shows that true strength isn't just about winning wars, but about winning the peace that follows. It's about having the wisdom to see the humanity in your former enemy and the courage to choose reconciliation over retribution. MacArthur could have been a conqueror, but he chose to be a statesman. He entered Japan as a general, but he left it as a founding father. His farewell to Japan in 1951 was emotional. Millions of Japanese people lined the streets from his headquarters to the airport, waving American and Japanese flags, shouting sayonara. It was a heartfelt tribute not to a conqueror, but to a man they felt had saved their nation from itself and given them a future of freedom and hope. Douglas MacArthur's legacy is complex, but his post-war governance of Japan remains his most brilliant and enduring achievement, a testament to the idea that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who build, not the ones who destroy. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of history as fascinating as I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that shape our world.